Here in a flashback story from the other side. This is actually from 2025, a story from earlier this year. Basically, whistle blows. A former judge spills beans about sexism in Aussie family law. Summer flashback. It's a story from earlier in the year. In an extraordinarily candid interview, a former Australian family court judge has spoken openly about the influence of feminism ideology and indirect political pressure on the court. Adelaide barrister and former family court judge Stuart Lindsay says our country's family court system is in enormous trouble and men are being discriminated against as a result. This segment is from episode 406, The Other Side, for the fortnight commencing Friday, April the 4th, 2025. Watch the full episode. All our shows on YouTube for free here. It's got the link there. I'll leave a link to the other side if you like. I'm not subscribed so much because I know this show is definitely about pointing out the obvious quadriplegic elephant in the room that it can't get up and do any damage really. It does do damage, but only if it rolls over. It's just another one of them shows. It's to point out the obvious elephant in the room so nobody notices the sleep paralysis demon under their own bed in the corner of our room down the road, the real issues, the ones that are coming to get us. Look at everything that we can all see for ourselves. Don't look at what's going on over there. And I think a lot of people they're set up like that because they're tunnel vision and narrow-minded and they don't have a great deal of foresight and they're not able to see the concurrent issues while they're focused on one. They're one-trick ponies, basically. They can only look at one thing at a time. So we'll watch this. But before I go on, I will go on to say it's. He explains on how he calls it political laws, and they're not. It's executive legislature. It's not. Let's not put lipstick on a pig and call it fucking sex. I think he misses the target on purpose, to be honest. Anyway, we shall see. How are we looking? Still running? Tracking? Seems to be. Come down the way a little bit. About there. Alright.
Great news. Thanks to your support, we are back in 2026. Our first show, Friday, January 23. But we're not out of the financial woods yet. Please click the join button below if you're on YouTube to become a member and support us, or visit our website right here. Thanks. Here's another one of our top stories from 2025.
I actually did watch the whole story. It was pretty enlightening. Hit the go button.
Okay, this next story is a biggie. In an extraordinarily candid interview, a former Australian family court judge has spoken openly about the influence of feminist ideology and indirect political pressure on the court. This interview was conducted and posted this week online by respected men's rights campaigner, friend of the other side, and journalist Bettina Arndt. While highly respectful of the court and the judges who work in it, Adelaide barrister and former family court judge Stuart Lindsay told Bettina that our country's family court system is in enormous trouble. He says the problem isn't on the bench as much as in the Family Law Act, the laws themselves that the judges are required to follow.
The court is a hated institution in many people's view, having a real bias against men. Do you think that's fair?
Look, there are very good people in the court, very good judges sitting in the court doing a conscientious job, and not only judges, but there are family consultants and people writing reports who are doing a fine job and doing it conscientiously and trying to do their best for both the litigants and especially the children in parenting cases. But it's fundamental matters about the structure of the court, and of course it's the reason we have a court is because there's something called the Family Law Act, and it's the Family Law Act that creates the real mischief.
Mr. Lindsay says the Family Law Act, the laws themselves, have been a political plaything for decades.
Politics brought it into existence under Lionel Murphy back in the 70s, and politics plays with it with every change of government. And so over the...
Okay. Before we go on, how about, right through this, just remove the word family and just all the court acts. Magistrates are trying to work with something that's almost impossible to work with. It's an unworkable environment. You can't blame... Yeah, I know, there's judges crooked as a fucking broken elbow. But not all. I think we have a couple that are trying to do the right thing here in Burnie, but, their hands are tied. They can only work with what they have to work with. So we have to give them what they need to work with. If we are going to make any change back to something that actually resembles law, not executive legislature. Executive legislature overwrites law. Just remember that.
Over that last 50 years, particularly the parenting provisions and the property division parts of the Family Law Act have changed. And changed fairly distinctly with changes of government. And of course, mainly, you'd have to say, left-wing Labor governments.
Oh dear. Mr. Lindsay says that the Labor governments are more influenced by feminist doctrines.
More influenced, as they are, by feminist doctrines, particularly in the 80s and 90s, and there's been a recrudescence of that.
It's called Amy's List. Okay, it's called Amy's List.
Since about 2013 under the Gillard government and a particular Attorney General under the Gillard government. So judges do their best to cope with these things. They do their best to ignore them if they can, these ideological strictures that are baked into the Family Law Act. And they do the best they can. I've made many good friends in the court. I know that men and women sitting as judges in their court do their job conscientiously, but you've got to bear in mind the building, the superstructure is that Family Law Act, and it has contained and it's promoted great wickedness throughout Australian society now for 50 years.
Great wickedness. Wow. The great wickedness plays out primarily on fathers and men in the form of false sexual abuse allegations. Mr. Lindsay says there was a sudden tidal wave of sexual abuse allegations in the 1980s.
And the court was completely unprepared to deal with those kinds of matters, as was the other institutions. And sexual abuse matters were there was an epidemic of them in the 1980s, and the mere making of an allegation could keep a father from seeing his children for some years while the matter wound its way through the system.
That's former Family Court Judge Stuart Lindsay speaking to Bettina Arndt this week. Mr. Lindsay.
What else was introduced in the 80s, 90s that they had to repeal in the end? The Baby Bonus Act. A lot of unwanted babies come from that era. A lot of new TVs and van Commodores, ounces of pot, pounds of pot. A lot of drug dealers got set up through that, through the baby bonus. Created a monster, didn't it?
Says that the psychologists and doctors who gave evidence in the 1980s against accused men also had their own professional issues.
Psychologists and doctors who gave evidence and provided reports on those matters. The methodology was primitive back in the 1980s, and it took some very brave psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors to clean that up. Great damage was done in the meantime. So we recovered from that. We had a Liberal government, John Howard's, who eventually got around to making some structural changes to the Family Law Act, and we had that, just to try and give an overview of it, we had that period under Darryl Williams when the so-called Family Law Reform Bill was introduced, and then at the end of Howard's government, as I say, with the Gillard government, and then Rudd, and then Gillard, and then even under Turnbull, Abbott didn't do a lot of fiddling with it. We find more and more, Part 7 of the Act, that's the part dealing with parenting, we find these strange ideological invocations inserted into the Act to try to ensure that judges have the right, or provide for the right outcome in accordance with the prevailing, invariably, feminist ideology.
Wow, he said the quiet part out loud. That's former Family Court Judge Stuart Lindsay bravely saying what needs to be said, what needs to be discussed, and what needs to be addressed and changed by our current crop of politicians. He makes it very clear in this interview that the problem is the feminist bureaucrats.
The personnel in the court might change and the Attorney Generals might change, but the bureaucracy, the Commonwealth bureaucracy, it continues on. And so it's really the bureaucrats who designed and assisted the politicians in writing and rewriting provisions of the Act to try and get specific outcomes. So, but it wasn't just feminism, of course. I can remember going to a conference in Sydney where we, 5 or 10 minutes in, the fellow was sitting next to me, we looked at each other, and we were getting pure Gramscian communist evaluations of all of our social institutions, and of course we walked out. We weren't going to put up with that. But so it's not just the legislation. It's not just it's the way the court operates. It's that Commonwealth bureaucracy, and indeed it's gone further than that, Bettina. The rot's gone further. It's the law societies and even the bar associations in the various states who are enlisted to these ideological excursions.
That's former Family Court Judge Stuart Lindsay. He says the law societies and the bar associations used to be professional guilds and associations that were there to look after members. Now, he says, they've been co-opted into ideological fashions and trends. As an example of how the feminist ideology is playing out in court, Lindsay discusses the latest changes to the Family Law Act, new laws that were snuck through Parliament by Labor on the last sitting day last year, which give more of the marital assets to alleged victims of domestic violence. Mr. Lindsay says this sets judges an impossible task, requiring them to perform acts of political theatre, unquote, as they try to find evidence of the impact of domestic violence, scouring through decades of a marriage, trials needlessly extended, vastly more paperwork, racking up the billable hours for expensive lawyers. What Mr. Lindsay says will be, quote, a huge waste of resources, unquote. And for the families concerned, the pain, the distress will be needlessly intensified. And the kids get affected. That's the most important thing. Lindsay also shares strong views on other key failings of the court, like the failure to enforce parenting orders and the lack of penalties for false allegations. It's exceptionally rare for a former judge to be brave enough to speak out against the legal and government machine like this.
Like I say, there's no accountability. Police and prosecutors face no accountability, and it's funny. Females can make false statements, and that's fine. That's all right. That's all right. Yeah. But a bloke makes any kind of statement that turns out to be not entirely true, he gets charged for lodging a false statement, trying to pervert the course of justice and all that sort of shit. Attempted contempt of court, all of that. You go to jail for it. But women just, no worries. I still have a family violence order on me for no violence. I still have a record of my firearms licence being suspended for it. I didn't do anything. Literally did nothing. Police make false statements all the time. They accuse you of things that they know you didn't do. It goes through court. You're found not guilty of it. What do they get? Nothing. Oh, you lost that one. Police aren't meant to be above the law. They're meant to uphold the rule of law.
So please don't underestimate the significance and importance of this particular interview by Bettina Arndt. Bettina presented this interview to a number of our mainstream media, including the conservative mainstream media, and none of them wanted to follow the story this week. It is a story when a former Supreme Court judge speaks out so strongly against the establishment. So something's not right in our media setting either. After you've watched tonight's episode of The Other Side, please be sure to head on over to Bettina's channel to check out this interview in full. Just search up.
A lot I've been trying to tell you is all along, that's a former judge. I've been trying to tell you all along. The judges are trying to work with something that's unworkable. They're just doing their best. They're trying, a lot of judges are actually trying to balance the scales, to give us blind justice. Justice is supposed to be blind, not one-eyed. It's not meant to be biased. They're just trying to give us fair adjudication. Most of them are. I know I've actually been on the other side of that coin before too, yeah. And I know some of them are, like I said, bent as a broken elbow with a double articulated forearm. It's bent as a water trap in an S-bend. Huh? How many other bends do you want? Bent as a U-bolt. But not all of them, and it's funny, every time you ever talk to any police officer or anyone, they're always pointing the fingers at the judges. Well, it's not the judges, you just heard from a judge. It's not the judges always. They're trying to work with an unworkable system. The unworkable system is made that way. Yes, it does have a bit, he said not so much the bench, but yeah, it has a lot to do with the bench, because who sits on the bench? The lawyers bar. The Barristers Association Registry. They say it doesn't stand for that, but it does. It's basically a secret society of sorts. They sit on the bench and they get into politics, and a government's top heavy with lawyers. And what do you get when you get more lawyers? You get more laws legislated at an executive level. So really they're not laws at all, they're executive legislatures designed to obfuscate law. Not everybody grasps that, because they don't grasp the three dialectics of English literature. It's I don't grasp all of it, but I grasp a fair bit of it, and man, it takes some getting your head round. It's that way on purpose. When one hand goes in the pocket and the other one comes up and scratches the nose or the ear, while they're looking at the prosecutor or the other lawyer, that's a signal. You're not meant to understand what they're saying. Well, you're meant to understand it, but you're not meant to comprehend it. Don't ever accept a plea deal. Accepting a plea deal is it's a plea of guilty straight up. Accepting a plea deal is pleading guilty straight up, and if they're offering you a plea deal, it means you're probably going to walk out of there with nothing. That's what that means. This isn't legal advice. This is personal advice. This is, right, if you feel that you've done nothing really wrong, and you know that you haven't hurt anyone, you've created no victims, and then they're offering you a plea deal, no. So, no, I'm not accepting your plea deal, please. Thank you. Thanks for the offer, but I'm quite capable of putting my own fucking head in the vice. I don't need you to do it for me. Or more to the point, why would I put my head in your vice? That's all you're doing. You're pleading guilty to something that's not even a crime. Half the time. But because you've admitted that it's a crime, well, what's the magistrate going to do? You've all made an agreement outside of a courtroom. The only thing the magistrate can do is make a ruling on it, a sentencing on it. Why? Because it's legislature. What you've done is you've entered into contract with legislature, and there's nothing she can do about it. That is corporate law. Corporate legislature, which is a legal system, not a law. It's not law. Law doesn't have a system. Law is law, and that's it. It's either law or it's legislature, and that's in a legal system. Legalities, legalese. It's where they start speaking the language of legalese. I've had a Crown Barrister and a Crown Prosecutor tell that to my face. They said, we don't have anything to do with that downstairs. That's just revenue. That's just a revenue racket. That's not law. I said straight up, that's not law. That's just a revenue racket. Ha! Talking about the Burnie Court, the Burnie Magistrates Court of Petty Sessions. If you can get yourself out of the hands of the Magistrates Court and upstairs, keep it upstairs. They'll try and drop charges down under $2,000, which takes it back out of the Supreme Court, back down to Magistrates Court. They'll try their best to get you back down there, because chances are, if you keep it upstairs, they're going to have to answer for whatever they've done. Best of luck with it, guys. I shouldn't say best of luck, because I don't wish luck. I don't wish luck. I don't do wishes. I'm not a wizard or a witch. I pray that we can turn this thing that's upside down back up the right way. I don't want to turn things upside down. I want it back up the right way. It's not like I haven't walked before and paid off a fine and done some work orders. I don't mind doing work orders anyway. I do it anyway. I do it anyway for nothing. People around the neighbourhood that don't have lawnmowers, old people and that sort of stuff. I'll just turn up there, mow their lawn. I'll do it while they're not home. I had someone the other day, did you mow our lawn the other day? Yeah. Only out the front. Why? Thanks to them, I put food on the table for my kids. They work. I don't. I'm a full-time single parent of 2 kids. One of which has level 2 autism. I need to be here. I'd like to be at work earning money. However, look, on the universal basic income that they dole out as Centrelink payments, socialist security, I get more to stay at home as full-time single father than any company or business around here can even afford to pay me as a qualified tradesman in my trades. I've got 3 trades and they can't afford to pay me what it's worth. In the sense, what it's worth is income versus inflation. I'm better off staying at home. At least staying at home, I can grow some vegetables and stuff. I'm hedging. It's a hedge fund. Well, think of your vegetable garden like that. It's a hedge fund. It's hegemony against inflation. It's hegemony against inflation is what that is. It's your own personal little hedge fund to insure yourself against hard times. So instead of looking at it as like a cooker prepper, look at it as insurance. That's how you insure yourself against hard times. You invest effort, a little bit of money for seed. What do you get back in return? You don't starve. Yeah, it went sort of off track, didn't it? But it didn't really. What I'm saying is the whole system is based on executive legislature. Everything. And we don't need the system. We don't want the system. It's bad for us. The whole system is the commandments and laws, all capitals L-A-W, or all lowercase L-A-W, but not capital L, lowercase A-W. That means something, okay? Like I said, there's 3 dialectics and there's 3 ways of writing law, and they all mean something different. And then you got L-O-R-E, which is law in the spoken form. Folklore. Folklore is not just tales, it's law kept in a story so that it keeps its meaning. The boy who cried wolf. It's folklore. It's law. It's actually law. You didn't realise that, did you? What does that law represent? Thou shalt not bear false witness. God bless you. Bye bye for now.